What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Mets Postgame Show right here on the channel and on X as our New York Mets take a loss in Game 2 in Sacramento against the A's 3-1 as the lackluster offense continues during this season. If Pete Alonso does not do well, which is very, very rare, the New York Mets do not win ball games. And that has been the case all season. When Pete Alonso goes, the Mets usually win. Unfortunately, a rare game for Pete Alonso with an offer. One of those games, right? He deserves to have one of those games. Somebody needed to step up. Where was Soto? Where was Lindor? Where was Vientos? Right? Nimmo got it started once again with a big bomb to get the Mets on the board early. And they didn't do nothing the rest of the game. But you got to give credit to the outstanding pitching from the, I was going to say Oakland again, from the Athletics, as former Mets prospect JT Ginn pitched very well, right? He wasn't outpitched by David Peterson. David Peterson pitched extremely well today. The only pitcher twice in this season out of 14 games has gone to the sixth inning and only gave up 2 runs. He had a total of 5 strikeouts, no walks, 7 hits. Now, the hits were there, but again, 6 innings, 2 hits. Outstanding performance by David Peterson. He did not deserve to lose today in this game. JT Ginn pitched well. 5 1/3 for JT Ginn? Yep, 5 1/3 for JT Ginn. 6 strikeouts, 2 walks, 1 run, 4 hits from JT Ginn. Sterner came in. Ferguson came in and lights out for the most part. Mason Miller, who Tyron Taylor was able to turn on a fastball and get a base hit. Luis Torrens just missed tying the game down the right field line, and that ball went foul. Unfortunately, it went foul, and the Mets had nothing else to show for it as Mason Miller closed out the game, and we lose 3-1. Mets are 9-5. It just sucks. This is the game you need to win, and this is probably like the 3rd time this year where the Mets have scored a decent amount of runs. Yesterday was a good amount of runs, 7 runs, and they come back the next day and they score 1. Both times in this season when they scored 10 runs, they came back with another 2 runs and 0 runs to follow the 7+ runs or the 10+ run games. That can't happen. This is too inconsistent of an offense to continue to allow the pitching to pitch extremely well and lose games like that. This is a situation where the offense needs to start picking up the pitching a little bit. The pitching has been so good that the offense, could we really think of a game where the pitching has basically lost us the game this year? Out of the 5 losses, it has been the offense probably every single time. You break down every game, it's probably the offense. The offense is way too consistent. You can blame Juan Soto for that. You can blame Mark Vientos, who should be batting 8th, if not out of the lineup. He's been terrible at the plate. He is one of those guys that I think needs a day off, and I believe Ken just said it in the chat. Let me just check. Yes, he did. Let's see. Yep, Vientos did more than the game. Yeah, you know, the at-bats for Vientos are just bad. It's not that, he's not laying off the breaking ball. He can't turn on a fastball this year. That is concerning. Mark Vientos can hit a high fastball with the best of them. We've seen him do it all last year. And Mark Vientos can't do it. He doesn't have a home run on the season. It is just a terrible sophomore slump for Mark Vientos. And here's the unfortunate part. You're not playing Brett Beatty at third base, as Brett Beatty had, a couple more strikeouts with 1 hit, which, all right, he got a hit, yippee. Nothing special. He probably closed his eyes to get that hit. But, look at this here. 1 for 4, 2 strikeouts for Brett Beatty. You're not playing him at third. So, and the Mets really don't have another third baseman on the roster. And that's where you find yourself looking at anywhere else. Where could you go? Right? Do you play Brett Beatty at third base for a few games? Sit Vientos. Maybe he needs a mental break during games. Like, that's a possibility. And now the Mets have no days off here. And here comes the other issue that the Mets are going to fall into. Because of David Peterson going 6 innings, it was nice to see that Jose Butte went 2 innings, so you kind of say you saved your bullpen for the most part, and thank God Peterson went that extra inning, and you had Jose Butte give you a couple of innings to warrant to save the bullpen. But again, 1 run from Buto, 2 runs from David Peterson. That should be a win. If you give up 3 runs or less, you should win the ball game. You can't be this inconsistent with the offense. This offense, when everybody's in this lineup, when nobody's injured, everybody's ready, besides Alvarez, but let's be honest, Luis Torrens have done a fine job offensively. When he got Lindor, when he got Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, I'm going to leave Alonso out of that because he deserves all the credit in the world. You can't even fault him for today because it's about time he had a game like this, right? It was going to happen, but he deserves no blame because look at the other guys. Juan Soto, 0 for 2. He had technically 4 at-bats. He walked twice. Again, when Pete Alonso's not hitting, we need Juan Soto to do more. How about jacking one over the yard? That would be nice. Lindor, he had a walk today, went 0 for 3. Too many strikeouts. All right, Alonso, let's, again, put him to the side. Marte had 3 strikeouts. Beatty had 2 strikeouts. Let's see. Tyrone Taylor actually had 2 strikeouts, which you don't blame Tyrone Taylor. He came in for the injured Siri. But overall, this offense needs to wake up, and we know who the fault guys are. And you know what? Nimmo got us started today, but could we be honest with Brandon Nimmo too? Is still kind of slugging along. If he doesn't hit a home run, he does nothing else. Like, this is the problem. This has been the problem. This has been the big problem for the first 14 games of the year. The offense either shows up or it completely doesn't. You have to have somewhere in between. This team, and again, runs per game during this season are a little skewed because of the 10-run game, the 7-run game, another 10-run game. But again, after each one of those high-scoring games from the Mets, they come back with 2 runs or less in the game directly after that. That is a problem. And Joel, you're 100% correct. 7, 8, and 9 are a problem. This is what me and Chris were talking about the entire pregame over and over again. 7, 8, and 9, right? When you have no offense. And again, Tyrone Taylor, I think he's fine. But again, you're going to see Tyrone Taylor play for the next couple of days with the uncertainty. He has a bone contusion. I think it's a shin or a knee. So he's going to be out a few games. So Tyrone Taylor is going to get the opportunity to start, probably for the next couple of games or so. We'll see what Tyrone Taylor can do. Maybe he can actually help this bullpen. You see how Tyrone Taylor, against one of the best closers in baseball, if not the best, and Mason Miller, turned on a fastball and got on base and was able to get the tying run at the plate because of the base hit from Tyrone Taylor. The bottom of the order is terrible. And you know what? You can link Vientos to that too. So 6, Vientos 6, Beatty or Acuna 7, Taylor's going to be 8, and then one of your catches is going to be 9th. And Torrens has been fine. But again, if the bottom of the order is basically a no-show. And that's the problem. Like, how far are you going to continue to go with Mark Vientos at this point, right? Nobody's saying he's a bust, but he's going through it right now. And this is what I talk about that I know people get mad at, but when a league adjusts to the hitter, right? It takes a full year. Why does it take a full year? I don't know, but we all know how baseball works. Usually it takes a year for the league, the entire league, to adjust to the batter. When the pitchers adjust to the batter, and if you notice, they're throwing a ton of junk to Mark Vientos, all off speed, all breaking ball pitches. They'll trickle in the fastball every now and then, but they're mostly throwing junk up there. They're throwing breaking balls and off speed pitches to Mark Vientos. He's swinging at them. So they found his Achilles heel. They found his weakness. It's up to Mark Vientos now to adjust to that. Maybe you got to start walking a little bit, the same way when we saw Pete Alonso early in the season before he went crazy with the bat, right? The first couple of games, what was he doing? He was taking his walks. He wasn't trying to do too much. That's what Mark Vientos is going to start to do. He needs to start doing that. You got to take your walks. You can't always just swing at crap just to try to, do some damage. You got to take your walks, especially when the struggling bottom of the order. It might get a little bit of a jump start if you get on base. But Vientos isn't even doing that, and that has been the problem. And it would be nice for Vientos to take a page out of Pete Alonso, what he did early in the season when he wasn't, knocking the ball around the yard. He was taking his walks. And that was the approach that we talked about with Pete Alonso. Mark Vientos has to do that. And how long are we going to wait until Vientos figures this out? And again, this is when you know of a major leaguer. Do I think Mark Vientos could be a fine major leaguer? Sure, absolutely. But he's done it 1 year. I know it was great during the playoffs and it was great last year. But you also have to continue to do it. You have to make adjustments. Major leaguers, the ones that stay in this league, make adjustments. And if you don't, guess where you're going to end up? You're going to be in the minors or out of the league. That is what Vientos has to overcome. They adjusted, the pitchers and the teams adjusted to what Mark Vientos is a favorite pitch and where he likes to hit, where the balls like where he likes to hit them, which is high fastballs. Mark Vientos turns on fastballs almost every single time. He had problems with the breaking ball off speed pitches last year, but they didn't adjust enough during the season last year by constantly throwing that. And when you constantly throwing breaking balls and off-speed pitches to Mark Vientos, now he's starting to look for that pitch, and he's getting fastballs thrown by him, which did not happen last year. That is the big difference with Mark Vientos this year. He's not adjusting to what the league is adjusting to. It always takes a year. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense when you say it out loud, but it happens all the time. We watch this time and time again. When a batter, and most of the time it's when a batter has a good season and you're like, all right, we don't know what Vientos is, right? We've seen what he did last year, but we've seen one-hit wonders, not just with the Mets, but around baseball, where they look great. And then the following year, they adjust to all the pitchers and all the teams adjust to him, throw different pitches, and found his weakness. Now it's up to Vientos to combat that and adjust to the pitchers. If he doesn't start laying off those pitches and take some walks and wait for that one fastball that you might get during an at-bat, it's going to be a long season for Mark Vientos. There's a reason why they call it a sophomore slump. You know why? Because it has happened before. And the reason why nobody, not enough people were talking about to start the season about a sophomore slump is because of what he did in the playoffs. Not even just during the season, but what he did in the playoffs. He had a Daniel Murphy type postseason. But again, it takes a full year for teams to adjust to a batter. And when they have a full season of video and what your weakness is, they will exploit it. And when they exploit it, it's up to the hitter to do it. And Mark Vientos has not. Mark Vientos is batting 120. He has an OPS of 401. You ain't doing nothing in this league when you have a 401 OPS and you're batting 120. It's just not happening. And until Vientos does that, and I mean, where are you going to put Vientos? I know Ken and others, and myself included, I think you need to take Vientos out of the lineup. Give him a mental break. Right? They did it with Jeff McNeil last year. They did it with a couple of guys throughout the season. Maybe you just have to give him a break. Let games go on and let him sit. Maybe if it's tight and the game is tight and you need a pinch hitter, and let's see if Vientos comes up and hit lightning in a bottle here and maybe get him going, and maybe he gets a big hit or he hits a ball over the wall and gets a big run for us. But at this point, I think you need to sit him. But here we're going to talk about it again. Who's playing third base? Could you do Luis Acuna? That means Brett Beatty is playing as well. So would you just put Brett Beatty at third base? And I'm asking you guys in the chat. Nobody wants to see Brett Beatty in this lineup anymore. But you don't have a third base backup. You really don't. So even if you play Acuna at second base and you got to sit Vientos, you're going to be playing Brett Beatty at third base. Or even if you want to put Luis Acuna at third base because he's the better fielder and leave Beatty at second base, who's been okay defensively, what do? Like that's is becoming the issue. They have no backup there. That's why Jose and we all wanted to see Acuna, and for whatever reason, they didn't sign Jose Iglesias because they were so involved and so concerned about getting Brett Beatty and Luis Acuna reps is fine, but this is where a veteran utility guy who can play all positions in the infield, especially the second, short, and third, Jose Iglesias was perfect for that. And I know it ain't happening. It is what it is. But that was not just a bat from Jose Iglesias. It was where he can play, where if somebody was struggling, somebody was injured, Jose Iglesias could fill and do the job. The problem is they don't have a backup for third base. It's Brett Beatty. Like, that's the problem. So you're going to sit Vientos for Brett Beatty, and on the offensive end, it's not much. But would it be worth it to sit Vientos for Brett Beatty at third base just to give Vientos a mental breaker for a game or two? Yeah, you can pinch hit him if you need to. Yeah, you can put him in late in the game for defensive purposes, but just to calm his mind a little bit. Because he's clearly overthinking at the plate. He's trying to do too much with pitches that he never really did last year, where he, mostly took those pitches, even though he had his fair share of swinging at those bad pitches, the breaking balls and off-speed pitches. But he was able to hit that fastball when they actually threw him. He didn't let them go by him like he is this year. So, well, Ken, see, I agree with you there. That, like, I would sit Vientos. I really would. Even if it is for Brett Beatty playing third base. Because, again, Brett Beatty is going to be in this lineup if Vientos sits. You could put Acuna at second or third. Brett Beatty's going to play. He's going to play either one of those positions. So, do you do that? No, Kag, it's not about that's the answer. It's not about Brett Beatty doing anything, because you're getting zeros from Vientos. So Beatty putting up zeros is the exact same thing Vientos is doing. What you're trying to do is save a young player from getting into his head where it can totally destroy his season. Because these are the type of years that a player that comes off a really good season comes into his second year and can totally lose it. And he can question his ability. And you could see Vientos, because he was really confident in spring training. He felt very confident. But it's not working. Yeah, Kag, I understand you can't stomach Brett Beatty. But you know what? Even Brett Beatty got a base hit today and Vientos didn't. I know that's crazy to say, but if I'm not, I know that's crazy, but it's a fact. Here's a funny thing. You want to know how bad Vientos has been? Brett Beatty is batting 129 and Mark Vientos is batting 120. So that means Beatty has one more hit with less at-bats. So what does that tell you? That's how bad Vientos has been. Vientos has been bad. Has been just as bad, if not worse, than Brett Beatty. Now, I'm only basing it on average, so I'm not going crazy here. But that's how bad Vientos has been. Like, he doesn't even put good at bats together. He got one hit today, right? It's nothing special. But we need Vientos to start hitting home runs. He is one of the power guys that we need. We were talking about guys hitting 34 guys in this lineup hitting 30-plus home runs. Soto has one. I mean, Brandon Nimmo has a couple more home runs than Juan Soto, and even a couple more than Lindor. Right? Vientos has 0. That's a problem. You need the power from Vientos. Because if you don't have the power from Vientos, how long can you rely on only Alonso? It's almost impossible. Yeah, you might win some of those games when Alonso goes off again, but one of the rare moments this year where Pete Alonso put up a 0, that's where you needed Soto. This is where you needed Lindor. You needed Mark Vientos. They were nowhere to be found. So the end all in this game was those guys, right? You're going to put Pete Alonso to the side today. He's allowed to have 3 strikeouts and 4 at-bats. He is allowed to go 0 for 4 today, right? It's going to happen. It's baseball. Because we all know Pete Alonso can go 2 for 3 tomorrow with a home run and have 3 RBIs, because that's what he's been doing. So Pete Alonso didn't do it for us today. Well, somebody else step up. It didn't happen. But it comes back to the same thing. You can't score 10 runs, you can't score 7 runs, and you can't score 10 runs. And then the direct next game, they score 2 runs or less in all 3 of those games. That can't happen. I'm not saying they need 8 runs a game or, the next day or 7, but can you give 4 or 5? Again, here's another game that the Mets lose where they give up 3 runs or less. If I'm not mistaken, this is the 4th game they lost this year. Now, we only lost 5 games out of 14. I think it's 4 games this year where we lost a game where the opposing team scored 3 runs or less. So what does that tell you? If the offense actually showed a pulse in those games and scored 4 or 5 runs, which they should average, by the way, per game, the Mets could easily have 1 or 2 losses. Let's cut it in half. That's how bad the offense has been. Now, we all know how good this offense could be, but Vientos can't be that bad. Can't be this bad. Juan Soto needs to actually put the bat on the ball. He needs to knock a few balls over the wall. He hasn't really done much at all. The walks are nice, sure, in certain situations, but you need him to start hitting. And I'm talking about producing runs. He's got to start doing that. You can't have your top 4 guys. And, Nimmo has been okay. But again, Nimmo's one where if he doesn't hit a home run, he doesn't produce anything else. It's a strikeout or a home run from Nimmo. Again, it's a bad Nimmo. I don't care what anybody says. Everybody can talk about Nimmo all he wants. He has more home runs than Lindor and Juan Soto. But this Nimmo doesn't excite me at all. Like, Nimmo doesn't excite me at all what he does. Because if Nimmo doesn't hit a home run, it seems like he does nothing to help this team at the plate. That's a problem. So, but again, you keep on putting Nimmo cleanup and you expecting this guy to be a 25, 26 home run guy and a 100 RBI guy, you're really mismaking. Like, that has been a thing. It's like Nimmo has been the solo home run machine because that's what he does. Like, it's unfortunate. Yeah, I agree with everybody. Yeah, running the scoring position for Nimmo non-existent. Nimmo is not a 4th-place hitter. But again, when you got Francisco Lindor there, you're not moving out of the leadoff spot. When Mendoza is not taking Juan Soto at this point out of the 2-hole, where do you put Nimmo? Especially when Mark Vientos is not hitting. Now, I'd like Brandon Nimmo in the 5-hole at the very least, but when Vientos is not hitting, who are you going to put in the 4-hole? That's the problem. Vientos, if he was going right, you put him in the cleanup spot and put Nimmo fifth. That works better. But when you got Starling Marte batting 5th, now, would you put Starling Marte cleaning up? You probably won't. I mean, I think he did it once this year, but that's the issue. So, unfortunately, for the New York Mets, Nimmo is in no man's land in this lineup. Nimmo, best spot in this lineup, if you wanted to make it as perfect as possible and have every guy bat in a spot where they probably be the most successful, probably Brandon Nimmo should be the 2-hitter. And, even the leadoff spot. Because Nimmo's best game is suited for the 2-hole and the leadoff spot. Like, that is the problem. And yeah, I also agree with Ken again. Me and Ken don't agree all the time, but I think we've been pretty good today agreeing on stuff. The A's haven't outclassed the Mets. Like, it's not like the Athletics scored 9 runs on us. Yesterday, yeah, they scored 6 runs, but Diaz would have walked the ballpark if they didn't swing. So, like, that's the biggest issue. Brandon and Ken, yeah, again, we agree again. Nimmo's best type of player, especially offensively, Nimmo was known for hitting the ball to the opposite field. He didn't try to pull everything, which he does now, which increases his strikeouts. His launch angle swing increases his strikeouts. It's all or nothing for Brandon Nimmo. How many times this year Brandon Nimmo has left the most amount of runners on base in this season so far for the New York Mets. Like, that's a problem. Because when you needed the big hit, go back a couple of years ago, when you needed the big hit before Nimmo decided to change his whole approach, when you needed that big hit, most Met fans would have said, I want Brandon Nimmo at the plate. Now, I want a high Brandon Nimmo, especially with runners on base. Like, that is the problem that the Mets are falling into right now. You have Nimmo in no man's land because of the success that Lindor had in a leadoff spot last year. It's very hard to have an argument to move Lindor from that spot. Lindor hasn't been terrible. He's been pretty good. He's been decent. Right? He's been a hell of a lot better in April than he was since he's become a Met. This has probably been his best start as a Met in April. So you're not moving Lindor. Now, again, I would put Nimmo in the 2-hole. I would make Juan Soto third, Pete Alonso clean up, and then go from there. I would, unfortunately, Vientos is not hitting, so you got to put him somewhere. You know what? Maybe you have to put one of your DH guys, either Winker or Marte fifth, and then, Vientos sixth again, and then 7, 8, and 9 is a crapshoot at this point. So that's the problem. This is the problem we kind of fall into. Yeah, Steven, I agree. I agree he's not a fifth hitter either. I agree with that. But his best possible spot when you can't really move the two guys, or Mendoza's not moving Lindor or Soto, where it's Nimmo's best spot in the lineup, the other best spot for him, which is probably third on the list out of leadoff and second, is fifth. And I would bet Nimmo sixth but this is the other problem. If Vientos is not hitting, Nimmo gets exposed in the cleanup spot and in the fifth spot because he's not that guy. Whatever they decided to do with Brandon Nimmo and try to make Brandon Nimmo, Brandon Nimmo is not a power hitter. I'm sorry. 20 home runs is not a power hitter, okay? Brandon Nimmo could hit 20 home runs without changing his approach because he puts the bat on the ball. He's gotten stronger even during the years when he was just a singles and doubles hitter. So he would hit 18 to 20 home runs. That's not the problem. The issue is they're trying to make Brandon Nimmo a 25 to 30 home run guy. And what is he, barely going to sniff 22 home runs? Maybe 23? But again, if he hits 23 home runs, what is that doing for us when he's batting 220, 225? That's a lot of missed opportunities with that batting average. That's why Brandon Nimmo, when he's like, oh, well, look at Brandon Nimmo. He had, 24 home runs, 24 home runs last year, almost 90 RBIs. Wonderful. But how many opportunities did he miss driving in more runs? Because if he didn't hit a home run, he wasn't productive. So this is the problem with Brandon Nimmo right now. And it's unfortunate, but it's reality as well. I'm just going to look at the comments really quick, and I appreciate everybody tuning into the post-game show. Obviously, we were trying to, bring Chris into this post-game if the Mets won to spam those W's, but unfortunately, the Mets decided to, play golf today and not play actual baseball. They had 5 hits, but they were kind of a lackluster 5 hits other than the Brandon Nimmo home run. So let's see what we got over here. Kagzan, I'm not a fan of Brandon Nimmo. Dude, what are you talking about? He has 4 home runs already. Yeah, again, that's why stats can be deceiving. And that's why when I get on people, when everybody goes, oh, he has 4 home runs. Yeah, okay, but look where those 4 home runs were, right? And again, it's not, again, when you start off, when he started off and Nimmo gets the solo home run, great. But what does he do after that? He's hit 4 home runs and 3 of them has been solo. And that's him batting cleanup. Now you could say, well, oh, these other guys haven't been getting on. That's wrong because Juan Soto has been getting on base as much as, he ain't doing nothing hitting wise. He's finding ways on base. Lindor, the same thing. Pete Alonso, if he's not driving in the runs, he's finding ways on base. So it's not like Nimmo. So Nimmo has 4 solo home runs. 4 solo home runs. But in the same breath, Brandon Nimmo has left the most amount of runners on base this season by any other New York Met. So those 4 home runs, and that's why stats can be deceiving, right? Brandon Nimmo, let's just go over it really quick, right? Brandon Nimmo. Here we go. He's batting 208. So with the 4 home runs, he's batting 208. I'm sorry, that is not acceptable. Like, I'm sick and tired. Like, if you don't care about average, I truly believe you're not a baseball fan. Like, you can deal with those analytic fools all you want. But if you don't put the bat on the ball, and the only time you put the bat on the ball is hitting a home run, and you're doing it mostly with nobody on base, and you have the most amount of runners left on base on the Mets, you're not having a good season. You're just not. Like, it's just, that's the problem. Like, it's not something that Brendan Nimmo had just did this year. This has been a trend over 2 seasons, 23, 24, and the start of this year. It's the same Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo got his contract because even in 2022, when he started to hit home runs, he was still batting 260, right? The home runs were getting up to 18, 19 home runs. I think he had 20 home runs in that season. But he was still a doubles machine, an on-base machine, a singles machine. When you wanted the big hit, you wanted Nimmo up there. I don't want Nimmo up there now because I know with runners on base, he's either going to strike out or pop up because that's what he's been doing. My holy, it's not being negative in a loss. It's called reality. Again, if you want to pull the covers over your eyes and not see the problem, then go ahead. If you want to rake on the Mets are 9-5 with the offense basically doing nothing other than Alonso. So that has been in 14 games. It's been 2 weeks of games. Like, that is the frustrating part. Like, if it wasn't for the pitching being so damn good, and that goes as a pitching staff as a whole, the Mets would probably be a 500 team, if not a below 500 team in their win total right now. How many times the pitching has held games in low-scoring games? Because, again, the Mets haven't been scoring runs. The runs per game are a little bit skewed because of the 2 10-run outings and the 7-run outing. They've had a lot of low-scoring games where they're winning 3-2, 3-1, 2-1, 2-0. Like, they haven't been that. Yeah, Rels, you're right. I absolutely complain, always complaining, right? But you know what? Have I been wrong? I've been complaining about the same thing. I've been complaining from day one about the offense. The offense should be extremely better. Again, you don't like the complaining. These are the type of fans that don't complain, but when things go wrong, and again, you can say, well, look at the record. They're 9-5. Great. But it's not because of the offense. And the offense should be the best part of this team. The bullpen should be a close number 2. And then the starters are number 3. That's the way it was going to fold. It was going to unfold. But it's been the bullpen number 1, the starters basically a close number 2, and the offense a far number 3. That can't happen. It's not going to be a sustainable winning model. Yeah, you might do it early, but again, you're going to constantly rely on your starters to do what they did. And Peterson pitched very well today, extremely well today. He didn't deserve to lose. But the offense was a no-show. Like, it's not harping on the loss. A loss is a loss. You can play a good game and lose. The Mets didn't play a good game today, especially offensively. You had 5 measly hits. Like, I mean, overall, you have to look at the problem. The Mets, if I would love to check this, but the Mets probably are top 5 in leaving men on base. They're probably left on base. They're probably in the top 5, if not top 3. And a lot of those runners are inherited by Nimmo, Juan Soto, and Mark Vientos. Because Pete Alonso has basically driven in almost every time, except for today. But boo-hoo, are we going to blame Pete Alonso today? Absolutely not. Even though I'd love to get on Pete Alonso, but I'm not going to do it because it's really not fair. Yeah, Rels, you could say you're all pathetic, but again, if you want to harp on what positive are you going to put today? You're going to talk about the pitching? We talked about the positive of the pitching. The pitching did nothing wrong today. So what are we going to say? We're going to be excited that the offense scored another measly 1 run? This has been their MO through 2 weeks of baseball, 14 games. Yeah, we're going to talk about the offense because the offense lost the majority of these games this year. The Mets, if the offense actually was, and I'm talking great, if the Mets were just competent offensively, they should have won 2 or 3 more games. They should easily only have 1 or 2 losses. And both of those losses probably from the Astros. The other games they should have easily won. And that's the issue. Like, if you watch these games, you see the problem. The offense has been an issue the entire season. They should be better. Like, I don't think anybody expects everybody to jump on all cylinders, everybody hitting at the same time. That would be beautiful. And at some point during the season, they probably will. And CAG put up a good stat. Yeah. The A's were 1-6 going into today. Now they're 2-7. Like, and Dolo, I agree. As StreamYard is not making me put up the freaking comments anymore, so I do apologize. So I'm going to say your name in the comments. Dolo, yeah, their approach is trash. That's 100% true. Vientos approach, terrible. Brandon Nimmo with the 4 home runs, 4 solo home runs, by the way. And Brandon Nimmo also has left the most men left on base on the Mets. Second is Mark Vientos. And not too far third is Juan Soto. So that is the issue. That has been the issue. Yeah, Rels, it's not the point of that's baseball. We all know that point. But to say that, oh, you're always complaining, congratulations. Welcome to being a Mets fan. You have to complain. But you can't harp on you can't only be narrow-minded and have blinders on and then only want to see the positives and wonder why the Mets have lost some of these games. And most of the time it's been because of the offense. And playing ball, I played ball all my life. So again, if you played ball, then you should know better. You really should. I played ball all my life too. So that comment goes out the window. You don't want to harp on the negative. The negative has lost you the majority of your games, if not all of the 5 games. That's a fact. There's not one time where you can pinpoint to the pitcher and be like, well, they lost us this game. You can easily point to many moments already in 14 games where the offense completely came off small. And yes, it is baseball. 100% this is baseball. But when the best part of your team was supposed to be your offense, definitely wasn't supposed to be the pitching, especially the starting pitching, who has probably outperformed everybody's expectations. So we're going to blame the pitchers, or should I just continue to talk about the pitchers and how great they've been? You want me to just leave the offense alone because you don't want to hear any negativity? Go ahead. Yeah, but Rels, this is not a 1-year thing or a 2-week thing. For Vientos, it has been, but he also hasn't adjusted yet. Brandon Nimmo, this is going on 3 years. Right? When you have Francisco Lindor having the best April of his Mets career. Now, Juan Soto hasn't been great. He's been getting on base, but he hasn't really done much offensively. Alonso had carried the offense. Vientos has been a no-show. That has been the problem. Yeah, Ken, but that doesn't mean that they have pitched badly. What I complained about with the starting pitching was the length will eventually hurt the bullpen at some point. Because if you constantly go into the well in the 4th inning, most of the time not finishing a 5th inning, that's when the bullpen is going to start to get hurt. It's not going to happen very early in the season, but when you get deeper into April, into May, and they still haven't gone, again, 14 games, David Peterson's the only one to go 6 innings. You see what happens when you go 6 innings? You can use one pitcher. And they did with Jose Butto. And they should have won the game. right? It's not about the quality of their pitching and how they pitch while they were in the game. What it's doing when you get out in the fourth inning and you can't get through the fifth inning, you got to use 4 or 5 guys. And even with the multi-inning guys, they've happened to use 3 or more guys. That eventually is going to hurt your bullpen. That's what I'm trying to avoid, especially early on in the season. You don't want to burn your bullpen in the middle of May. Because, yeah, you might have reinforcements, but are they going to be the ones in the minors like the Genesis Cabrera or possibly Nunez could have really helped the cause? But who are you replacing these guys with that have been so good? Well, Cag, I'm not saying Lindor is great, but look at his numbers. It's been his best numbers in the month of April in his career with the New York Mets. That's a fact. I'm not saying he's been really good, but if he was 1 for 34 like he was last year, and we were 9-5, and could we be honest? Lindor has won a couple of games for us. So, and that's early on. Lindor was a no-show for the first, month and a half of the season. He was 1 for 34 to start last season. He was 1 for 14 prior to him going a little bit more this year. So he's been better than last year. The problem is Vientos has been terrible. Soto has been Nimmo is a solo home run machine and nothing else. There's your problem. Well, Joel, see, I don't even think that's fair. Like, I got on the length of the starting pitcher with the length of them should be a little bit better, but they're not Swiss cheese. They've pitched well while in the game. Giovanni, I'm not even going with the hitting coaches. I'm not blaming the hitting coaches because if you're going to blame the hitting coaches, then why is Pete Alonso hitting? Why did Pete Alonso start hitting? You know why? Because he stopped listening to the coaches. Everybody is a professional. No, there is nothing in your contract saying that you have to listen to your hitting coach. There isn't. Pete Alonso completely changed his approach from last year. He's not over swinging. He's not only trying to hit home runs. He's going the opposite field. He's taking the ball and hitting the ball. He's not trying to always hit a home run. He'll take the ball for a single. He'll take his walk. That's a totally different approach from last year. So if coaches, especially hitting coaches, matter, then why don't you give credit to the hitting coach for Pete Alonso? You're not going to do that. It only happens when the players are not hitting, they blame the hitting coach. When the players who never listen to anybody and do their own thing every single time, now we want to blame the coaches? No, it's on Brandon Nimmo for trying to completely change what made him successful, what got him that big contract from the New York Mets. That's the difference. Brandon Nimmo could come in tomorrow and saying, all right, yeah, I can still hit my home runs, but when we need a base hit with first and second and 2 outs, and you're trying to drive home that run from second base or trying to hit the ball on the gap and be a doubles machine instead of striking out and propping up, because that's what Brandon Nimmo does with runners on base. So that's the issue. Brandon Nimmo is trying to be something he's never been good at. I'm sorry, when you're a 15, 16 home run guy, and Brandon Nimmo was basically a 14 to 16 home run guy prior to him just being a home run type or trying to hit home runs and changing his approach. Hitting 4 to 5 more home runs, and most of them probably being solo, which i.e. 4 home runs this year, 4 solo home runs. 4 to 5 home runs aren't going to make a major difference when you're leaving 20 men left on base in a span of, 10 to 15 games. Like, that's how Nimmo has left a tremendous amount on base. He left a small army left on base this year already. I'm sorry. I would take 15 or 16 home runs than his 22, 23 home runs, because when you can get that base hit with a runner on second with 2 outs, or even a sac fly with a runner on third in less than 2 outs. That's what Nimmo was great at. He wasn't good. He was great. He completely lost that from his game. And now he's a strikeout and somewhat, quote unquote, somewhat a home run hitter. Because I'm sorry, I'm not calling a guy who hits 4 more home runs or 5 more home runs that he normally did when he was at his best as a hitter and telling me he's a home run hitter. I would rather take 4 home runs less from his 20 and let him hit 16 if his average will jump up another 15 to 20 points. Because that's a few more base hits. That's about 5 to 6 more base hits that he would get with runners on base than striking out with runners on base. That has been the issue. And Roger, I agree with you. I think we've been talking about that the entire time when it comes to the lineup, right? Lindor in the leadoff spot because he was MVP caliber last year. It's very hard to move Lindor. He's been pretty decent. He's been decent this year. Not great, but hell of a lot more than what we got last year, for sure. Early part of the season. Juan Soto has been getting on base, and thank God Pete Alonso has been basically driving him in mostly because he drove in Juan Soto more than anybody else on this team with Juan Soto being on base. And the oddity of Juan Soto is that when he's slumping, and he's clearly slumping with the bat, he still finds a way to get on, and it's been beneficial because Pete Alonso has been driving him in almost every time. So that has been, I would say, a positive for the Juan Soto situation, even though we need a hell of a lot more from his bat. But at the very least, Juan Soto isn't striking out at a rapid pace. He's still getting on base, better than anybody else on this team other than Pete Alonso. So Juan Soto's getting on base, which is the only thing he's done positive this year at the plate, but it's been benefiting because Pete Alonso has been doing the job. So that has been the only positive with Soto 2 and Alonso 3. The issue is nobody's doing anything in the 4-hole. If you put Vientos there, if you put Nimmo there, it's been a 0. Right? That has been a major issue. And again, this lineup is kind of, it's not a perfectly set up lineup because of the situation of where the top 2 hitters in a lineup usually, or at least Lindor now is, usually it should hit now, right? You're not moving Lindor. At this point, Juan Soto, even though offensively with the bat and, not doing much run production in the 2-hole, what he's doing in the 2-hole is exactly what you need a 2-hitter to do. You know what Juan Soto is doing? Is what Nimmo used to do. Get on base almost all the time. Even when we didn't put the bat on the ball, he would take a walk. So, yeah, we want a hell of a lot more run production from Juan Soto. But the traditional number 2 hitter, not today's number 2 hitter, where you're hitting, your best hitter and the biggest power hitter in your lineup, number 2, but a traditional number 2 hitter is a guy who gets on base for your 3-hole hitter and your 4-hole hitter, who should be your biggest run producers, right? I know that's like cliche now in today's baseball, but what the Mets, the way they're set up, what Juan Soto is doing is what we saw from Brandon Nimmo a couple of years ago when he got his big contract. So Nimmo should be the 2-hitter. But what Nimmo is doing now, and if he doesn't change his approach, Nimmo will be a terrible number 2 hitter. Like, that is a fact. He would be a terrible number 2 hitter. Excuse me, just give me 1 second. I got to charge my laptop. Can't die now, right? So, like, that's the problem. Brandon Nimmo, you can throw him in the number 2 hole, but if he doesn't change his approach, he's going to be a terrible number 2 hitter because he doesn't walk, he strikes out a ton, and doesn't get on base enough. So he would be a terrible number 2 hitter. At this point, Juan Soto is a better number 2 hitter than Brandon Nimmo because of their approach at this point. The beauty of Juan Soto is when he starts hitting, and he will, that on base does not change. When he's on, and he'll still take his walks when he needs to. So that's the issue. The lineup is a little bit of a problem because of the players that you have in your team. And you know what? Maybe getting McNeil back will help this team out. You know how crazy that sounds? We are dying for Jeff McNeil to come back because, again, Acuna has been fine. He has been great. He got 2 hits yesterday. For whatever reason, they put Brett Beatty today. He did get a hit, but yippee. He did strike out on a nasty curveball in the ninth inning from Miller. But, and my holy, I agree. Vientos is the power hitter. Nimmo isn't. But again, I would rather have Vientos having those 4 home runs over Nimmo because we've seen Vientos hit those home runs with runners on base. It is extremely rare when Nimmo hits a home run with people on base. When there's people on base, he usually strikes out or is not productive. That is unfortunate. Rels, I agree with you, but Vientos isn't hitting. And I don't think in a 2 hole is going to do that much of a difference. Now, where I think what you could do is, every Met fan likes to talk about protection, right? Pete, you know what's funny? Nobody's talking about protection for Pete Alonso this year because he's been so good. So where are the Met fans? And I brought this up. Not one Met fan this year has talked about protection for Pete Alonso when he's been amazing this year. When it's been a basically zero behind Pete Alonso. You see how funny that goes? So I'm going to use the Mets fans' motto that they love to use when I talked about Pete Alonso last year when he couldn't get a big hit in the season, in the regular season, and they blamed protection. Even though Vientos last year gave Pete Alonso the best protection he ever had in his career as a New York Met. So let's talk about protection. Met fans love to talk about that. If you want to really get Vientos going, how about this? You put Vientos number 3, number 2, or you could put him number 3, leave Soto number 2, and put Pete Alonso cleanup. Doesn't that make sense? The best hitter in your lineup right now, you're giving protection to Vientos. Wouldn't that work? Or Met fans, we're not allowed to talk about protection unless it's Pete Alonso. And CAG, I agree with you too, right? They have looked basically almost non-existent offensively other than Pete Alonso, and yet they're 9-5, which is signs, by the way, of a good team. Now, what you hope is when the offense finally gets going, the pitching doesn't falter a little bit. Because as baseball goes, what happens? When one thing starts to get good, the other thing starts to tail off a little bit. And that's baseball in a nutshell, right? What you hope is the pitching doesn't take too much of a fall, but it might falter a little bit, but you want them to be just a little bit worse. They can be a little bit worse, but the offense pick up, and that's when you go on a roll. We win 5 in a row, 5 out of 6 constantly. You don't go on 3 games or extended losing streaks. That's what you want from this team. Now, it's yet to be determined if that is going to be done. Can the offense start carrying this team if the pitching starts to, waver a little bit? Not a lot. I'm not saying they're going to be terrible, but there's going to come a time when the pitching is going to, tilt a little bit in the wrong direction. It's going to happen, right? Because it is baseball. But will this offense step up when the pitching takes a slight, detour? And they will, because, again, it's baseball. But will the offense carry the pitching when the pitching needs a little bit more help? Because at this point, the pitching has carried the offense this entire season. And even when the Mets scored, 10 runs, they were still giving up 5 runs in that game. And look at yesterday, they scored 7. They gave up 6. Right? There was, a little bit of wiggle room, so they got away with it. But it was only a little bit. A couple of games. Not even a handful. So when is the offense going to step up and take over games for a stretch of games? Like, could we see it through a 5-game stretch where the offense can score 5.5 runs per game? Because they haven't been doing that. And yet, runs per game are skewed. When you score 10 runs and then 1 run, you kind of average out to be like 4.5 runs per game. So that's where the offense got to pick it up a little bit. And And they don't have to do much. They're leaving a ton of men left on base. That has been the MO of this New York Mets offense this year early in the season. It's not like they need, 3, 4, 5 home runs during that stretch. They need base hits with runners on base. That's all they need. That's all we're asking for. Brandon Nimmo, instead of trying to hit a home run with somebody with 2 men on base, how about hitting one down the line for a double and driving in 2 runs? Vientos, the same thing. Stop striking out. How about hitting a sac fly? How about hitting a base hit up the middle with a runner on second? You only need base hits in a lot of these situations. Like, that is the issue. Like, I understand if, like in the 9th inning, there was nothing else Luis Torrens was looking for than trying to hit a home run with Mason Miller up, because it's going to be very hard to rack hits up consecutively against Mason Miller. So in that spot, when Tyrone Taylor got on, I expected Luis Torrens to try to hit a long ball, because that makes sense. When a pitcher is almost impossible to get consecutive hits off of, or multiple hits in a row to get a rally going, you're going to need that bloop in a blast. Ken, bingo. They don't know how to do that, at least not yet. Again, it can change. We've all seen it, right? I mean, Pitcher Perfect last season, where they couldn't dig themselves out of a hole at all. They couldn't. And then all of a sudden it clicked. Maybe it has to be that one moment where a struggling Vientos gets that big hit and gets him going. That Juan Soto, big hit gets them going. Like, it's got to be something like that. It's got to be somebody struggling where overall, and that includes Nimmo, by the way. Yeah, Kage, exactly. Like, it's not just Juan Soto. I mean, he's one of the problems, but it's the Brandon Nimmos, it's the Mark Vientos. They need one of those where they're losing in the game and somebody comes up late in the game, hits a big home run. And yeah, that happened earlier this season, one game. That was great. But, and that was Pete Alonso. But, that eventually got us to win that ball game. But again, it can't be Pete Alonso all the time. He is human. As you've seen today, he's not robotic. He is human. And he's allowed to have one of these games. And that's where somebody else had to step up. The beauty of last year, when they started being one of the hottest teams in baseball, when somebody wasn't getting the job done, there was always somebody else to get the job done. Right now, there's nobody helping Pete Alonso. And that is the problem. So the Mets lose 3-1 to the Athletics. Rubber game tomorrow, same time. I think it's the same time, right? It's 4 o'clock again. Let me just double check before you put words in my mouth. And it's 4 o'clock. Good. 4:05 game tomorrow. You're going to have Kodai Senga against former Met Luis Severino. So it's going to be a tough matchup. We all know that. We know Severino has great stuff. Kodai Senga, pitched fine. But what are we going to get from him? His last time out, he couldn't put a lot of guys away. He didn't really have his ghost fork. They weren't swinging at it against Miami. They weren't swinging at that pitch, so it ended up getting his pitch count up more. And he wasn't, lights out Kodai Senga. It's time now where you got to dominate this Athletics. And again, it's not like the Mets, gave up 12 runs today. Kodai Senga needs to, put up 2 or less runs tomorrow. There's no reason why he can't do that. Again, quality start, 5 innings, 2 runs. I take that. The Mets should win that ball game. It might take a Pete Alonso 3-run homer to do so, but they should win that ball game. So Kodai Senga versus Luis Severino. The unfortunate loss for David Peterson, who didn't deserve it. 6 innings, 7 hits, 2 earned runs, no walks, 5 strikeouts from David Peterson. The Mets record is 9-5. They played a rubber game in Sacramento tomorrow with Senga on the mound. What do the Mets have to do? Here's the shocking answer. They got to score goddamn runs. You can't score 10 and then score 1 the next day, or score 7 and score 1 the next day. Right? You can say it's baseball all you want, but you can't be that kind of inconsistent and continue to get away and have the pitching save your asses every single game. At some point, we all know pitching is going to tilt a little bit. That's when the offense needs to pick it up. And it's got to start. At some point, it's got to start. Because the Mets have been very lucky about playing teams that don't really have a lot of good pitchers, right? Their best pitchers they faced has been in Houston to start the year, and they lost 2 out of 3. So this offense, who already hasn't done nothing against, I'm going to say it, mediocre starting pitching, when they faced really good starting pitching, they've lost all those games, or at least almost all those games. The Astros had better pitching. The Mets lost 2 out of 3. They faced Alcantara. They couldn't hit him that one time. Wasn't pretty. They just got to be better. The Mets have been fortunate that their pitching has held up the end of the bargain when the offense has been non-existent. And what is a little bit worrisome, probably a little bit more little than, it should be more worrisome than a little bit of worrisome, is the fact that this offense has been struggling against mediocre starting pitching. JT Ginn was very good today, but overall, the Mets have not faced very good starting pitching. They haven't even faced a lot of the top of the line starters yet. You've been facing good to bad, I would say below average to bad teams so far. And that's probably benefited them in winning some of these games. But there's going to come a time when you're going to face a team in a 4-game series that have really good pitchers, and maybe the offense doesn't do well, and the pitching might not pick up the slack. They might, but we'll see. Tomorrow, can the offense show life? Can they get it going? Right? You probably get a quality start from Kodai Senga, right? He hasn't pitched terrible. He hasn't pitched bad. Hasn't been great, but he hasn't pitched bad. We need a game where you can just be like, all right, score these runs. Let's get out of Sacramento and let's head to Minnesota, where it's probably going to snow. So Mets are 9-5. They lost today 3-1. Rubber game tomorrow. Me and Chris will be on the pre and post tomorrow. The pregame will be at 3 o'clock tomorrow, most likely. Again, look for the stream. I'll post it later tonight. Probably be 3 p.m. for a pregame, and we'll do a postgame right after the game. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to the Mets Postgame Show right here on the channel and on X. Unfortunate loss. Blame the offense 100%. They need to do better. Have a good night, guys. Let's go, Mets. And I'll see you tomorrow with CP on the pregame show. Good night, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets